and I mean every word that I said, that I, Kiza BESIGYE, will not seek nor accept any office in any new government that comes out of our struggle. I will not. I will not seek to be a beneficiary in an office or... Why? Because the biggest problem that the country has is not servants. The biggest problem that we have is not having the owners. The reason, indeed, there is a lot of struggle for offices is because that's where power is. Not in the population. That's why the population is actually paid. The population is the servant of those who are in office. And the revolution we seek to have in this country is for the people to become the masters and those in offices to be their servants. You heard Mr. Museveni say, I am not a servant of anybody. And he was right, because he is the master. We want those in leadership to be servants. And so those who aspire to remain masters in our country should be in the population, ensuring that the servants do our will. And that's where the deficit is. The deficit is on the demand, not on the supply side. The deficit is in the population being weak. And I have made a conscious decision that I will not seek to be a servant. I will continue to seek to be and to strengthen the masters of our country. Now, having said that, I consider that we should not have any difficulty whatsoever, and we should not be delayed in having a leader for our struggle. We did not have a problem being convened here. There was a leader who was here. So has it stopped all of us coming and talking? No. So why should anybody who convenes us be a problem? Especially convening us to go to a struggle. Why should it be a problem? So, you know, let anybody who can lead us step forward, lead us to struggle. Applause. Because it makes my intended remarks to be easy and quick to present. Because you see, when I got here, I was given a heap of previous presentations about constitutional and electoral reforms that we have gone through in the last couple of or many years, including very elaborate ones that were presented to Parliament in, I think it was 2009, by the Inter-Party Cooperation, which dealt with the Constitution, the Presidential Elections Act, the Parliamentary Elections Act, the Local Government Act, the Electoral Commission Act, and so on. So the body of suggestions regarding reforms that we already have is quite large. But from the presentation of Councillor Walubiri here, which I entirely associate with, it is evident that that heap of proposals that we have previously come out with, and indeed that this conversation may add on to, are proposals for a totally different type from the one we are in now. And like he has said, they will be useful, no doubt, but not now. Why? Because you see, the laws that we seek to reform emanate from the Constitution. They arise from the Constitution. And the Constitution itself is supposed to arise from the people, from the population. So, if we are amending the article number 1, sovereignty, and indeed the first clause of that article says that all power belongs to the people. The question is, and that is where, what we are discussing must be centered. Is that the case in our situation? Does power actually belong to the people? Because if it doesn't, then the Constitution does not belong to the people. So you cannot start amending the Constitution that does not in the first place belong to the people. The people must first of all have the power to make the Constitution, and later on the power to amend it. Because if they don't have the power to make it, they cannot have the power to amend it. And I don't think that answering the question of who has power takes, a lot of searching to find answers to. Because we all know that, to start with, Uganda was not even formed by the people of Uganda. Even the country Uganda was not a product of the people of Uganda. It was a product of a foreign group saying, now all of you people in these margins, you have become Uganda. We did not have a say to say that this was Uganda. We had our own countries that were demolished without our will. Buganda was a country entirely with its own constitution, with its own institutions, without its own culture and so on. Buganda did not decide to end itself and to become something else. Neither did Bunyoro, neither did Ntoro, neither did Ankole, neither did all the groups, the countries that were eventually formed into Uganda. It was not their consent that they become Uganda. It was force. And of course, we struggled, the people of Uganda struggled to end that domination, that control by others. Unfortunately, that struggle did not come to its proper maturity, because then the people who were dominating us, due to their other challenges they had globally, because they had also dominated nearly the whole world, the British. They dominated India, America, Canada, New Zealand, Australia. Because of the challenges they experienced everywhere, they offered independence rather early, before we were strong enough to push them out. and to determine what happens to ourselves. So the force of arms that they left behind with our people at independence, which they had been dominating us with, then were used by those very people that were entrusted with those arms to continue the domination. And it's the same kind of domination that we still have today. That's why we are here in this room talking about these reforms 60 years after independence. 60 years in which the people of Uganda have never removed any leader. Never. 60 years in which they have never said, we are lifting this one to be our leader. All leaders are lifted into office by guns and removed by guns. So clearly, people do not have power. Those who have guns have the power. So the people with the guns are sovereign, not the people of Uganda. That's why Museveni is sovereign. He is the sovereign of Uganda today. No doubt, we are beginning to see the succession to the crown prince. Yes, because when individuals are sovereign, then they pass on their sovereignty to whomever they decide. Because in fact, the sovereign is the constitution. If the people of Uganda were sovereign, they would be the constitution. They are not. And that's why when we purported to make a constitution in 1993-94 and put things there which the sovereign did not like, they are no longer there. So the sovereign is the supreme law. The sovereign is the law. The sovereign today is Mr. Museveni. And so the reforms that we really must be talking about, which are of the present day, not the ones of reforming the Electoral Commission. The reform, because the whole question is, how do we end state capture that the senior counsel talked about? Because all institutions are captured by the sovereign, the current sovereign. Institutions serve those who have power, not those who don't have power. So all institutions today serve the sovereign, serve Mr. Museveni. All of them. And it doesn't matter how they arise, they must serve who has power. Even if you said, you know, the political parties or the opposition, even call them the opposition, that NRM has no say in the formation of the Electoral Commission. And what is called the opposition parties appoint the Electoral Commission. That commission too will serve the sovereign. Even if the sovereign was not part of their appointment, they will still serve the sovereign because he is the one who has the power, even if you are the ones who appointed it. So, how do we end institutional capture? And the Honorable Warviri was very clear. Parliament is captured. That's how you saw the soldiers come and enter Parliament and beat up everybody. We still have cripples here. Crippled in Parliament by people who came under camera during broad daylight, under camera from the office of the president, and came into Parliament and beat the hell out of the members of Parliament who were saying they had something to say. Yes. We saw what happened in the courts when the Black Mambas attacked court not once attacking the temple of justice, as Justice James Ogola said, who was the principal judge then, that the temple of justice has been raped. That rape continues. So we cannot have an independent judiciary. It's a joke. We cannot have an independent parliament. We cannot have an independent electoral commission. We cannot have an independent Bank of Uganda, though the constitution says so. You don't have a governor now for, I think it's coming to 2 years. Because the real governor is there, the sovereign. So the bank continues functioning, even if there is no governor. The sovereign is there. So the reform that we must talk about is the reform that can liberate the institutions. How do we liberate the institutions? The reform that we must be talking about is what kind of reform will end impunity? What is the reform for impunity? Because it's not that all these laws are not there. The people who are being captured every day and terrorized and tortured, it's not that we do. The law is followed. No, and everybody knows that. The question is, what can you do? You know? If I kill you, if I beat you, if I imprison you, what will you do? Nothing. So what reform will reform impunity? What reform will end what he was talking about? The commercialization of our politics. What reform? In 2011, Mr. Museveni invaded the central bank and took out what was close to 2 trillion shillings without parliamentary approval, most of which was pumped in the 2011 elections and caused the inflation of more than 30% overnight. How do you control that? In fact, now commercialization has been formalized. You pass money for patronage in Parliament every year. The money that goes to State House for patronage, that officially somebody has, how many billions did I see in the coming budget? 130 something billion for his donation. For his donation, formally. You know, a district, budget of a district is about 15 billion. Some 7 I hear. Budget of a district. Somebody's pocket money to donate 130 something billion. And that is only the beginning before the supplementary budgets which you will pass. And you have no choice but to pass it. So how will you reform that? How can you reform commercialization, militarization, which he was talking about? How do you reform that? Because every election is like a war. The deployments you see all over the country is a war footing. You know? You see what happens. Even in a by-election, a small by-election, the deployments that are there, how do you reform that? Because these are not some things provided by the law. How do you reform the structural impoverishment of the population? Because the population has been impoverished structurally by taking all their money and their money servicing a few people, structurally. It's not that the population does not know, but what can they do? The parish model money you have, that they are singing about now drumming parish development model. This is part of the patronage money for the next election. And it's being rolled out very, typically, the template is there. You'll see when Myoga came, when Bonaba Gagawale came, it is all rolled out as part of the donations for the next election. Not that it's going to cause anything in the population, and the population knows, because in any case, all the money they use comes from those very parishes. Is there any money that does not come from the parish, including the 137 he's going to be donating, came from those parishes? So money goes from parishes, it does not go back. There have been no supplies to health centers, from what I have been hearing in the countryside for the last 6 to 8 months. No single supply to the health centers. Whoever is sick in the whole country must look after themselves. Yet they send the money to the center. But they have to fend for themselves. So what reforms? And they know that they have impoverished the whole country, so that whomever they give 1,000 shillings will be clapping on their knees. It's not just the population which is impoverished by that structure anyway. Even the members of parliament are impoverished. Because the country now knows you as ATM machines. Whoever, you are the one who has to bury everybody. You are the one who have to treat everybody. That's why every member of parliament is now buying an ambulance. You are the health care system. You are the funeral service. You are the ones repairing bridges and doing what and doing what. All things which should have been budgeted for, which from the people's nani. So how do you reform that? The commercialization, the impoverishment, structural impoverishment of the population. So the only reform that we all must be talking about is how to regain sovereignty. How do we regain our sovereignty? And indeed, Council Warubiri was very clear. Sovereignty will not be regained by simply asking those who took away our sovereignty to simply return it to us. It will not happen. Nobody becomes free without fighting for their freedom. We must fight for our freedom. There are no two ways about it. Whether you like it or not, there are no two ways about it. I've been hearing, of course, voices mainly from our detractors, of course, who have been saying, but you've tried, this, it hasn't worked, you've tried that, so what can you do? We continue trying until it happens. You only fail when you stop trying. And we have been very clear that we should not go again to fight with guns, because guns are the problem. We can take up guns and defeat the guns of Museveni with the people's support, but how will the people cause those guns to now account to them? They won't, and that's what happened in what we believed was the revolution of NRM. That we took guns, took over power, but having taken over power, the population which helped us to do so had no capacity to cause us to account to them. And everybody is seeing the outcome. So, guns are not the solution, but the people can be the solution. And there are critical things here that we must do, and I'm glad Councillor Warubiri pointed out that, first of all, let's give that reality to the population, so that the population understands the dilemma in which they are and what they must do. I was pleading with your leader, the Honorable Matia Mpuga, who was, of course, as you know, our leader in the Walk to Work campaigns. I was pleading with him that hopefully after this, we should go and take the outcome of this, the message of the need to liberate ourselves and regain sovereignty. We should take it to the population, region by region, and all of us go and tell the people that this is what we all need to do. And let them then stop us. Those who are allowing the crown prince to go and hold all kinds and manner of processions and meetings, let us go, and they beat us. And the struggle starts from there. From these rooms, we should go out and engage the population of today, that we are competing for power. Because that is the narrative, the wrong narrative on which we come here even. That we have parties that are competing for power. And so even we compete amongst ourselves. The prisoners, the ones who have no power, are competing amongst themselves also. Find people, me I'm red, me I'm blue, me I'm green, me I'm what? You are nothing. We should simply, yes, you are just prisoners. That is the badge we have. We just have a badge of being prisoners. And so we should, for the time being, until we are in a position to make the constitution for ourselves, the institutions for ourselves, and based on that, be able now to talk about how we organize, and that's where the parties become relevant in the next phase. For now, let's shed, these fallacies that we are organized to contest for power. Let's get together and seek the real power first for the population, make ourselves a new constitution that we believe in. Hopefully that constitution will, among many things, cure the problem of holding all that power in the center here, so that that power is also dispersed in the population that owns that power. Over-centralization of power has been part of the problem that we have. And once we have a democratic constitution, democratically constituted institutions, then we can talk about free and fair elections. Not now. Thank you very much. You may find a different situation that we did not envisage. So many questions have been asked. Unfortunately, I have an engagement that I can't wriggle out somewhere, and so I'll be as brief as possible. But certainly, I think this is maybe the beginning of the engagement and conversation. I hope more opportunities will be there for us to exchange, and nobody has answers to everything. We all need to simply bang our heads together in order to chart a way out of a very, very difficult situation that we have in our country. Now, dialogue with Museveni. My honest view is that there is only one matter that can be reasonably the subject of a conversation with Museveni. and that is the manner in which he leaves office. Because if we are to have orderly transition, orderly change of power from gun rule to people rule, if we are to have an orderly transition, then he could be helpful, and that is, I think, the miracle that the senior counsel Oliveri was talking about, a soul that may become Paul and say, I have created enough problems, at least let the transition go on peacefully. And in that negotiation, for me, and I believe the people of Uganda, there can come quite a bit of forgiving. A lot of the crimes and atrocities that they have occasioned on the country. We can be willing to say, since you have not insisted on staying until more blood spills and so on, we are ready to discuss your freedom after office, and that you can live peacefully in or among your cows. That can be discussed, and I think that is, if he was that inclined, is a dialogue the country should welcome. In Kenya, President Moi allowed the country to have a transition, and the country in turn allowed him to have a peaceful retirement. The people were very, very bitter in Kenya, I can tell you. In fact, on the handover, after the election of the new leader, President Kibaki, Moi was stoned as he left the handover ceremony because people were very, very bitter with him. But because the thing had gone smoothly, they were forgiving, and he went to his Kabarak home and stayed until he died in peace. And Kenya moved on. So that is the only dialogue that we can have. Not a dialogue on constitutional reforms or what reforms, no. That will not be useful. And that's why I did not certainly agree with my brother Norbert Mao's assertion that his going into the NRM would yield anything. In fact, it would do the opposite. And it has created some confusion in his constituency in Gulu and all those kinds of things. So that is the only dialogue that I see. The leader of our struggle, that should not preoccupy us, you know? And you see, it nonetheless has been one of the critical factors why our struggle has not gone very far. Because we see each other as rivals. And we look at whatever we are doing in how we shall reap from whatever success we may achieve. And that, you know, it's like people who fought over, you know, they said we should now do business, let's go and buy some, let's buy an egg and incubate it. If it gets a chick, that chick will produce more eggs and we shall share in all this. And people started fighting over how they will share once the chick hatches, even before they bought the egg. And there is a lot of that, you know, people looking at how they will reap in whatever dispensation is won. And that is why, actually, some of you may have heard me recently say, and I mean every word that I said, that I, Kiza BESIGYE, will not seek nor accept any office in any new government that comes out of our struggle. I will not. I will not seek to be a beneficiary in an office or... Why? Because the biggest problem that the country has is not servants. The biggest problem that we have is not having the owners. The reason, indeed, there is a lot of struggle for offices is because that's where power is. Not in the population. That's why the population is actually paid. The population is the servant of those who are in office. And the revolution we seek to have in this country is for the people to become the masters and those in offices to be their servants. You heard Mr. Museveni say, I am not a servant of anybody. And he was right, because he is the master. We want those in leadership to be servants. And so those who aspire to remain masters in our country should be in the population, ensuring that the servants do our will. And that's where the deficit is. The deficit is on the demand, not on the supply side. The deficit is in the population being weak. And I have made a conscious decision that I will not seek to be a servant. I will continue to seek to be and to strengthen the masters of our country. Now, having said that, I consider that we should not have any difficulty whatsoever, and we should not be delayed in having a leader for our struggle. We did not have a problem being convened here. There was a leader who was here. So has it stopped all of us coming and talking? No. So why should anybody who convenes us be a problem? Especially convening us to go to a struggle. Why should it be a problem? So, you know, let anybody who can lead us step forward, lead us to struggle. The only problem will come from what the Honorable Gilbert Olanya was saying. Choosing candidates. Because then you are choosing rivals for competition to offices. This is not what we are looking at today. And it is because we confuse the struggle with the elections that we are in the place where we are today. I thought I was very clear that we shall have free and fair elections after having a democratic constitution, building democratic institutions arising out of a democratic constitution. And of course, a democratic constitution comes after people regain their power. They make their constitution, they put their institutions, and those institutions can then organize elections. If you are planning to look for a sole candidate to go to the 2026 elections, I am not with you. I will not be party to be considered for those kinds of things. I don't think that 2026 in itself, organized under what we have been discussing, will ever cause Ugandans to be free. And the sooner we really unite over that, the better for this country. To tell all those who are organizing all these fake things that we shall not allow you to organize these fake things. And by the way, when we talk like that, some people say we want to boycott elections. No. We should simply invite the whole country not to allow any other person to organize fake elections here. And if we lead the country to say no organizing fake elections here, no election will take place. You were asking what kind of actions can we take? You see, the most important actions are not even actions of that, confrontation with those who are holding this country. Non-cooperation. If we don't cooperate with those who have power, their power is gone. Just non-cooperation. And the people can be organized, and that's why organization is critical. We can organize the people not to cooperate with whoever is dominating them. And, if, you've been hearing of countries which have organized. It won't come by itself. You must organize from the grassroots. So that if tomorrow we say, for example, and I have been giving this as an easy example to give, but there are many ways of non-cooperation. If we said from tomorrow, no food comes to the market, no firewood comes to the market, no charcoal comes to the market. You've been fighting over the charcoal people in Acholi. Who would do it? If ordinary people in the village, if they see you with a bunch of matoke on your bicycle, they say, hey, didn't you hear? You wait until they tell us something else. All those with guns, once they see the organization and determination of the country, nobody has gone to the street. They themselves will capture whoever is capturing the country. You say, we have solved the problem. The problem, we now know it. We have solved it. So what do we do? The soldiers themselves, whom Mr. Museveni calls his, they will capture him themselves if the population shows their determination. And they will say, now we have solved this. Wherever there has been a transition, soldiers have mutinied. They have rejected the orders of their commanders because they see the population is now strong and ready to be their commanders. They will reject the orders of the fake commander. And then they will say, now the population, what do we do? And the power has already changed. We say, okay, now you have solved the bit of the problem. Go back to the barracks. We shall tell you what more to do. And they are now saluting you, the civilian who has never held a gun, because you have taken over their command. And that is the transition we are talking about, which must happen sooner or later. But it will not happen unless we organize from the grassroots to empower our people to say enough is enough. And I think that's where we go. So elections are a matter that we should have possibly another engagement on. If we are to participate in an election, how do we participate in an election under this obtaining situation? That's an engagement I think maybe the leader of opposition can facilitate, and we have a discussion about that. How can an election itself help in liberating the country? Because it will not be helping you to get power by itself. But possibly it could help you to liberate the power, to be used to liberate the power. But in that case, how do we engage in it if we are to engage in it? We can have that conversation. Now, so the formal informal engagement, I don't think should arise. I think there should be one engagement, whether by formal structures or informal structures. The engagement should be one, liberation, focused on liberation. And the activities done by the formal organizations and those done by the informal organizations can differ. For example, what you do in Parliament to support the liberation struggle can differ from what me, who is outside, can do from outside to support the liberation struggle. But the objective must simply be one, and there needs to be coordination. They are just fronts. That you are on that front, I'm on this front, the other one is on that front, but we are coordinated to get the same objective. And what you do are coordinated. But the objective should be one, liberation. Not that one is diplomatic, the other one is not diplomatic. The objective is one. I think I've already responded to the single candidate that was raised. The use of guns, I thought I was very clear that it's really not a viable option for democratization. It's a viable option for changing government, no doubt. We can bomb Museveni out of power. The question is whether those bombs will engender a democratic dispensation. They won't. But they can cause a change of government. What we are pursuing is not just a change of government. It's a change of power from a few people to the whole population. And that's why the whole population must be involved in that struggle. Because nobody gets power to give to others. They must seek it themselves. And once organized, it is very, very easy for them to do so. And there is a unique opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, I think. It's a ghost town. The local governments all over the country, I think more than 90% of local governments are under NRM. Local governments, the district chairs and the councils, they are under NRM. They themselves will lead this revolution, the local governments, because they are bankrupt and have been for a long, long time. The other day I met an LC3 in Mitiana, somewhere in Mitiana, who said the other budget they had got 87 for LC3, 87 million, and his LC3 has 31 parishes. They had got 87 million. It had now been cut to 15 to look after 31 parishes for a year. So all these local governments are waiting for your mobilization to get a new dispensation in which the whole country can share equally. Because they also see, they know what I was talking about, that Museveni is going to have 130 billion to start with as warm-up for his state house, while they are starving and their children cannot go to school. So there is a unique opportunity now. This is why if we organize it quickly now, we can get results quickly. For the first time, those who have been supporting Museveni, the foreigners, and now he's pretending to be the champion against foreigners, when he has been babysat by those same people, funded and so on, now the foreigners are also asking second questions. And that's why there is all this manipulation about homosexuality, which everybody seems to be consumed in. It's diversion. It's now Museveni is the champion of anti-homosexuality. Why, if he is a champion of anti-homosexuality, his government has never brought the anti-homosexuality bill in Parliament? Never. He's a champion of other people's, of Basari's bill. been in government for 40 years. Why hasn't he ever brought a bill himself for him to be a champion of homosexuality? So it's only private members' bills that have been debated in Parliament. But now he becomes the champion. And we help him to fight foreigners who have now abandoned him. We must be tactical in how we approach struggles, because struggles are not only domestic, they also have geopolitics in them. We must be strategic in how we champion our struggles. So, ladies and gentlemen, the opportunity that lies in the country today, from their economic collapse, from even mismanagement of the security institutions. Security institutions are not happy. They cannot be happy seeing a 4-star general violate their own laws with impunity, which is what General Muhoozi is doing. Disciplined forces are held together by discipline. We now have a situation where the topmost officer of the force is the one with impunity violating the law. The other soldiers and officers of the force are not happy about that. That's an opportunity. So let's grab the opportunity that is before us and cause the changes that our country so desperately needs and deserves. I thank you very much. I hope the conversation will continue.
Thank you very much, Colonel Kiza Besigye, and definitely the conversation will continue even outside of this retreat to the public, and I am sure the leader of the opposition has heard about the conversation on how to take